Welcome back, y'all, and happy Wednesday. This is the Bluechip Breakdown, and I'm your host, Bull. Sounds like our Vols are going to get to practice in some snow today, which is great because on game day, as of this morning, it sounds like the high is going to be 35 and the low is going to be 22. But today, we're going to be breaking down the matchup between Tennessee and Ohio State's linebackers, backs, and tight ends. Please do make sure to like and subscribe to the channel. All right, y'all, let's start this thing off looking at the different speeds from both teams with the linebackers, backs, and tight ends up at the top. We do have Dylan Sampson, and this column right here is just showing their max speed this season in miles per hour. So he's at 22.6 miles per hour this season. Next is going to be Quinshon Judkins. That's going to be Ohio State star running back at 21.5 miles per hour. Now he's tied with Nico at 21.5 miles per hour. So I think that's a good look for Tennessee. Deshaun Bishop is sitting right here at 21.4 miles per hour. So, he will be running back number 2 for Tennessee. Then we have Travion Henderson at 20.6. There's a little bit of a drop off there. He's not the faster of the running backs. We're going to kind of break him down a little bit more here in just a minute, but he is very, very good. Fastest linebacker is with Tennessee. That's Arion Carter at 20.4 miles per hour. Let's kind of come on down here. The fastest linebacker for Ohio State is Sonny Styles at 19.7. That's really good speed for his size. All of OSU's linebackers are big. Now, right here, we have Arvell Reese at 19.3 miles per hour, so pretty close right there. Then we see that Will Howard is actually tied with him at 19.3. I didn't think that Will Howard was this fast just as far as straight line speed goes, but he is. So that's something that we will also be talking about here a little bit more in just a second. And then we have Caleb Perry, which would be probably linebacker number 3 for Tennessee in this game. We'll see how much 4-3 do we want to run. He would be that third linebacker that comes in. Holden Stays is going to be the fastest tight end on both of these teams at 18.7 miles per hour. And then Cody Simon, he's definitely going to be one of OSU's starters at linebacker. We're seeing he's only at 18.4 miles per hour, which is still pretty solid speed. Now, this is going to be OSU's fastest tight end, G. Scott. He will be their starter at 18.4 miles per hour as well. This will probably be pretty interesting to Tennessee fans that Ethan Davis has only been clocked at 17.9 miles per hour this season. Now, sometimes these stats can be a little bit skewed because the players aren't always getting up to their peak speed based off of the plays that they're getting whenever they come in. So I did also want to kind of throw that in there. Jeremiah Telander is going to be another one of Tennessee's linebackers. He's probably going to be a starter, only at 17.9 miles per hour. He doesn't really play with speed. He plays more with his mind and understanding where to be. And I also wanted to throw in here, just for the Tennessee fans, that Edwin Spillman, who hasn't played that much this season at linebacker as a true freshman, only clocked at 16.3 miles per hour. I think that he is faster than that. Like we talked about, they don't always get up to their max speeds whenever they're in the games. And he has not played that much. Eli Purcell is another one that I think will probably get some good playing time at linebacker because Jalen Smith more than likely won't be playing because he has entered into the transfer portal. All right, let's start off with the quarterbacks. We have Nico at the top, and then we have Will Howard. We can see their stats right here. A lot of this stuff might not make too much sense to y'all, but right here, 19 passing touchdowns for Nico to 27 for Will Howard, 5 interceptions for Nico to 8 for Will Howard. Now, we'll scroll over a little bit. These are the big-time throws right here. Big-time throw percentage is a little bit higher with Will Howard than it is for Nico. Now, big-time throws is what I would consider like an NFL sort of a throw. Okay, that's throwing the ball, making some really difficult throws. Now, we'll continue to kind of scroll this thing over. You can see that Nico's been sacked 27 times. According to Pro Football Focus this season, Will Howard has been sacked 12 times. And just as far as the scrambles go, Nico scrambles a lot more than Will Howard does. Nico scrambled 44 times this season. Will Howard has scrambled 12 times. The passing yards per attempt, Nico's at 8.3, Will Howard's at 8.9. So pretty close right there. And then right here for the completion percentages, Nico's at 64%, which I think is really good for a freshman, but Will Howard is at 71%. So very, very accurate. And, I think that he does run their scheme well. Let's keep this thing moving. All right, right here, we can see the average time to throw. And Nico is at 2.94. Will Howard is at 2.68. It's better to have a lower number in this because it's talking about how quickly are you getting the football out of your hands. But we do know that these are different offensive schemes. Tennessee is going to throw some more deeper passes than Ohio State does on a typical basis. We have more 5 to 7 step drops. Ohio State operates a lot off of their quick game. All right, now let me show you all the backs that we'll be talking about today for Ohio State. And of course, the one tight end down at the bottom, but we're going to go back to the quarterback, Will Howard, number 18. He's listed at 6'4", 235 pounds. He is a graduate, and I think that he can make all the throws. I'm not as low on Will Howard as other people are. If you're just talking about from a physical perspective, I think that he can get things done. as a quarterback. But he does have a tendency to throw the ball in coverage, I think, a little bit too often. And it's just because he trusts his wide receivers and they love to throw the football outside of those numbers. What that means is Tennessee's cornerbacks will be getting challenged by Will Howard. And we know that our cornerbacks are very good at batting footballs down, making plays and things like that. So I do feel like that favors Tennessee in a lot of these situations. But Howard does a good job of operating their offense. I think that he has a pretty good pocket presence. He's not the most elusive player inside of the pocket, but he does know when to step up and, how to buy himself some extra time. So Tennessee is going to have to make sure that we're getting to him, that we're getting him down or, at least holding onto his arms or something so that he can get some of those passes off. And we also talked about him running over 19 miles per hour. So he's a guy that Ohio State will have some designed quarterback runs for, especially in the red zone. Tennessee knows this, but it's going to be easier for us just as pass rushers because he loves to stick inside of that pocket and throw the football to all of his playmakers. And let me also show y'all this because I thought that this was pretty interesting. Just looking at Will Howard's numbers with no pressure versus his numbers without pressure. So with no pressure, what we're seeing is he's about 77% accurate. He's got 22 touchdowns to 5 picks. And if you come down here to him versus pressure, what we're going to see is that he is at about 49%, 5 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. And that's pretty typical, right? I mean, quarterbacks don't operate well with pressure. I mean, there might be one or two, but most of them just don't. That's just how that goes. But the more interesting thing about it is if you come back up to the blitzes, Will Howard is actually doing a pretty good job versus the blitz. He's at about 73%, 14 touchdowns to 1 interception. What that tells me is that he's a veteran that understands what to do within their offense. He can read defense as well, and he knows where to go whenever blitzes are coming. But you don't want to necessarily blitz them. You want to be able to get the pressure without blitzing. And I think that that is something that Tennessee might try to do. But at the same time, these stats could be skewed because I've seen him getting sacked versus blitzes. So this is just based off of the times that he was able to get the football out of his hands versus those blitzes. Either way, I wanted to show this to y'all just because I thought that it was pretty interesting. All right, now let's talk about Quinshon Judkins. He is going to be number 1, and he is their number 1 running back, listed at 6 feet tall, 219 pounds. He is a junior. On the season, he has 817 yards with 8 touchdowns. He's averaging 5.6 yards per carry. Now, he's a big guy that can move, that runs really hard. He has good speed. We kind of talked about that earlier. They love to get him the football on the outside. It will be more of the running back that they try to get him in space with the football. He can also catch the football coming out of the backfield. And he's not much of a make you miss sort of a player, but he does a great job of pressing up to the line of scrimmage, putting his foot in the dirt and getting vertical to get those yards. So, also very patient. He has really good balance, things like that. So he's just an all-around very, very good running back. And Tennessee's going to have to come up and make sure we have very sure tackling to bring him down. A lot of people are probably going to get involved with the tackling because he will run through contact. Next, we have number 32, Travion Henderson. He's another running back. He would be running back number 2. He's listed at 5'10", 208 pounds. He is a senior, and on the season, he has 746 yards with 6 touchdowns rushing, and he's averaging 6.8 yards per carry, which is crazy because he's more of their in-between the tackles running back. He's more of their bruising running back, right? Like I would say maybe the more physical of the two, but really they're both pretty physical runners. Either way, this is the guy that is going to get the bulk of the carries coming right at our linebackers, coming right at our defensive front. But he does a really good job of getting upfield quickly, okay? He is a one cut and get vertical sort of a back. But as soon as he gets to that second level, he's getting to the outside, which is absolutely beautiful. Like, I'm not going to sit here and lie to y'all. I love watching their running backs run. I have no idea why they don't stick to the run more, why they're not a better running team. It has to do with their scheme, I'm sure. But either way, Travion Henderson is another one of those players that will have to come up and hit and tackle. He can also catch the football coming out of the backfield. He does that very well, on top of being able to run the football well. And I think that he does a good job of taking care of it and things like that. And now we could take a look at all the running backs and everyone else that's had a carry this season for both teams, pretty much side by side. So up at the top, we do have Dylan Sampson. And as y'all can see, he does have the most carries out of everyone that's going to be on this list. He also has 22 touchdowns. Let's scroll this thing over some. He does have 4 fumbles. He's got to do a good job of, or, a better job of holding on to the football, especially in this game. But he is averaging 5.9 yards per carry in the SEC. And a lot of folks think of the Big Ten as this run first, run stopping sort of a conference. But we saw what that really looks like versus Iowa last season. Iowa went to the Big Ten championship Tennessee ran the football down their throats. Tennessee pretty much blew them out, and we were missing several of our key players in that game. So we understand that the difference in competition on a week-to-week basis is tremendous with these two conferences. And we can scroll over a little bit and talk about the yards before contact. And really, this is a better indication, the yards before contact per attempt. DeSamp is at about 2.2 yards before he feels contact, whereas Ohio State's running backs are at 2.5 and 2.8. It's not a huge difference, but at the same time, it does just kind of go to show, I think, how tough Dylan Sampson is as a runner. And right here, we are talking about the percentage of total yards after contact inside of this column. So DeSamp is 62.4% of his yards came after contact, whereas it's in the 50s with Quinshawn and with Travion Henderson. Now let's get to the last player right here at tight end, number 88, G. Scott Jr., listed at 6'3", 243 pounds. He's a graduate, and they don't throw the football to him that much. He's not a huge part of their offense. They use him more as like a gadget piece, but I think that he does work well. A lot of his catches are going to come in the flats. Every now and then they'll scheme him up more towards the middle of the field, but he has pretty good hands. I would say he's more of like a pass-catching tight end, not as much of a physical blocker. I think that he's going to struggle going up against Tennessee's linebackers or edge players. I think that they're going to blow him up. There is a difference in the way that we take on the run versus what I've seen with Ohio State. And we'll get to that a little bit more probably next week. Either way, I think that he's a solid player. He's a solid kind of like gadget piece, but not a huge deal for Tennessee to have to worry about. Ohio State wants to target their wide receivers a lot more than their tight ends. Now let's flip the page and talk about the Buckeyes linebackers. I'm only going to be talking about the top three right here, but I want for y'all to see the sizes. They're all really big. I think they're all really good athletes. They actually put me in the mind of Alabama's linebacking core, where they're big, they're fast, really smooth athletes and fluid and things like that. But they don't play the way that they look, okay? They are not overly physical, maybe outside of number 20. Number 20, I've seen him really shock some folks at the point of contact. But everybody else, I'm not trying to say that they're soft, but they're softer than they look. I'm just going to say it that way. So let's start off with number 0, Cody Simon. He's actually the smallest linebacker, listed at 6'2", 235 pounds. He's a graduate. He's going to be a Mike linebacker. Typically, he's always in the middle. I haven't seen him play outside that much, but he does look good in space. He's sideline to sideline. He can cover. He can run. He does hit. It's just not that forceful of hits. And he does a pretty good job, I think, of getting off blocks, except for whenever you get your hands on him. He can avoid the blocks, but if you get your hands on him, he tends to get moved very easily. So looking forward to this matchup with our offensive line and our tight ends versus really all of their linebackers, but I would say especially Cody Simon. The next player, number 20, Arvell Reese, listed at 6'4", 238 pounds. He's a sophomore, and he's looked, I would say, the most physical out of all these guys. And I'm talking about more of guys coming up to block him. I've seen him shock some offensive linemen and knock them off balance. You don't see that really with anybody else, but he is a player that tends to miss tackles every now and then, but he's very long. Okay, he looks pretty good out in pass coverage, things like that. He's another one. He can move well. He actually kind of glides and floats around. So great athlete, but I do feel like we can go right at him, okay, especially for running some of those power schemes, some of that gap scheme stuff. He is a player that Tennessee is not going to have trouble getting physical with because that is what we're used to. Next player, number 6, Sonny Styles, listed at 6'4", 235 pounds. He's a junior. The interesting thing, y'all, is that on their website, he's actually listed as a safety. So I don't know what the backstory is behind that, if he's playing some sort of a hybrid role within their defense, if he came in as a safety and then grew into a linebacker. And that's kind of what he looks like. He actually looks like a guy that could have played in the secondary before and just kept on gaining weight, kept his speed and things like that, moved down to backer. And I think that he looks good. But at the point of contact versus people who block him, I've seen him get moved a lot. I've seen him get pushed around. But if you don't block him, he can most definitely make some plays and make some stops. So looking at this entire linebacking core, y'all, I do feel like Tennessee can have success just doing what we do. I'm very curious to see, will they try to switch up how they play? Will they play more physical versus Tennessee? Because I've watched so many games, especially these bigger ones, and I just haven't seen the overly physical presence from most of these linebackers. So I think that this one really does favor Tennessee. All right, y'all, now let's recap, and we're going to start off with Tennessee's backs and tight ends versus Ohio State's linebackers. And both rosters are very talented, but Ohio State might be the most talented roster in the entire country. They've got a lot of very athletic and big linebackers. There's like 5 or 6 that they're rotating. There's not that much of a drop-off with any of them outside of the simple fact that not very many of them are physical at the point of contact. And I think that that's going to hurt them versus Tennessee because we get downhill. We're physical with our blockers, with our tight ends or offensive line, whoever, even our running backs. We're going to run through contact, but they're also fast, right? Like we've got guys that can make you miss and that play with speed. I think that if you throw in the element of Nico with some of those zone reads and things like that, they haven't looked the best with some of that read option stuff. Just talking about their linebackers. Now, the thing about the Buckeyes is that they have some really good safeties, and we'll get to that tomorrow. That could probably help them out with that. Either way, I think that this definitely does favor Tennessee in a game that's going to have to be played more physical because that's what Tennessee is going to try to dictate in this game. And plus, it's cold. Won't be a whole lot of passing and things like that. So I think that inside of a phone booth, okay, if we get into a physical altercation, Tennessee's going to win 10 out of 10 times. Now let's flip it over and talk about Ohio State's backs and tight ends versus Tennessee's linebackers. Like we talked about, they are very, very talented. They've got two great running backs. They've got several tight ends that I think can do some nice things. They just don't use them as much. And watching guys like G. Scott try to block, I'm telling you, he's going to struggle trying to block, especially our ends. But, with the linebackers, he might have a little bit of success, probably not that much with them either, because everyone's going to be playing physical. I will say this, though. I'm going to give the edge to Ohio State because we don't know how our linebackers are going to play. Arion Carter, he's been really good. Jeremiah Thielander, he's been solid. Caleb Perry, he's also been pretty solid, especially later on in the season. But if you look at some of the, other guys that are going to have to play, like a true freshman, Edwin Spillman, what's he going to give you? He looks great versus Vanderbilt, but is he going to look good in this sort of a situation going up against a veteran quarterback that does a good job of reading defenses and knowing what to do pre-snap? I think that some of the mind games, and it's not just about their quarterback, Howard, but really their entire team. There's a whole lot of veterans there. So putting some of the underclassmen in, that does concern me at linebacker. And then we could also bring in a guy like Eli Purcell, who is a walk-on body, but he's a vet. So he knows what he's seeing, and he probably can get there mentally, but can he get there physically? That's going to be my question in a game like this. If he does get more snaps now, because we know that Jalen Smith might not be playing in this game. I mean, probably not going to be playing in this game. So I think that if you look at all of those things, with some running backs that get downhill, that do a really, really good job of being physical, of making people miss and all that type of stuff, I think that Tennessee's front four, okay, we talked about the trenches on Monday. I think that our front four is going to do just fine. But I do have some concerns about what our linebackers are going to do to kind of fill those gaps. Now, if we get an A game from our linebackers, I think that Tennessee definitely wins this game because this is really the only place that I have any concern at with our Volunteers. But those are my thoughts. Please share yours with me down in the comment section. And as always, please do make sure to like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, share with your friends, family, and other Volunteer fans. We'll see y'all on the next one. Thanks. Peace.